Well, good morning and welcome to day one of CISO Forum Canada 2021. As the chair mentioned in the opening comments, it's the third iteration of this conference, and I'm truly fascinated by the journey that we've gone on. And to be here for the third iteration of this conference in this hybrid environment is truly a testament to the success that this conference has seen over a period of time. My name is Ali Hirji, and many of you may know me as the lead for both AI and cybersecurity at Durham College. And in today's session, I'm going to be diving deep into the impacts of quantum in the world of ransomware and cybersecurity in general. You know, often when I was in high school, I remember being told that physics, computers, are the operating systems of the universe. And if you really want to see what's changing in this operating system, a peek into quantum is probably a good starting point for you. And I couldn't think of anybody better than the CEO of IronCAP, Andrew, somebody who's well respected in this space, been doing quantum cryptography since it was even discovered as a thing, several patents behind his name. Here's an individual who will definitely give us a very interesting peer into what do we mean when we talk about quantum safe encryption. So before I dive into this with a discussion with my panelists, esteemed folks from across Canada, I'm going to welcome Andrew to say a couple of opening comments and set the tone for this very interesting yet delicate and critical topic. Andrew, welcome to CISO Forum Canada 2021. The floor is yours for the next couple of minutes.
Thank you, Ali. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Chung. I'm the president and CEO of 01 Communicate. We are a publicly traded Canadian company who has spent the last very many years in the area of cybersecurity. More precisely is quantum safe cybersecurity, the product and solutions. And today I am very proud to present our panel discussion comprises of many industry experts to talk about the cybersecurity threats imposed by quantum computers. Now, before I do that, I'd just like to talk about three things. First of all, I'd like to talk about the relationship between email phishing and a ransomware attack. And then I'm going to talk about the current antidote to the problem and what you can do about it and why they are not working as expected. And then finally, I'm going to talk about our solution to that problem, the IronCAP X product. So let's get straight to the point. I am sure you understand that it is a very serious issue for email phishing and the ransomware attack. But exactly how serious it is, let's put it into context here. Now, first of all, the proof point stated that 57% of organizations have experienced a successful phishing last year. I repeat, 57%. That's more than half in just 1 year. And then the Cybercrime magazine also stated that for every 11 seconds, there's a victim of ransomware attacks of any kind of companies. 11 seconds, that's a lot. And then the IBM also stated that the average cost of a ransomware attack is more than $4.6 million. That is more than the average cost of any the data breach. So this has become the top crime, contributing to 44% of all the business loss in the world. The bottom line is phishing is a major source of ransomware attack. So no wonder why the US Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell stated that the cyber attack is now the formal risk of the global financial system, even more so than the lending and liquidity risk that led to the 2008 financial meltdown. So this is not invented by Andrew Chung. It's actually word by word from Mr. Powell. So it's a very serious issue. Now let's face the reality. And the bottom line is, if you haven't been phished, right, you will be. And the problem is you may not even know about you have been phished because the hacker, once they are in, they can decide to act immediately, or they can wait for years before they lock your data and demand a ransom. And they may even just sell your data in the dark web. And this is actually a very common practice too for nationwide sponsored hacking the activities. So the bottom line is phishing is here to stay, and we need to deal with this. And it's going to get worse and much worse with the arrival of quantum computer, as stated earlier by Ali. And this is because the excessive computing power of quantum computer is going to render our current encryption technologies such as RSA totally useless, exposing our data completely. And this is actually getting is a lot closer than you think. Now, you may not know about it, but IBM has already announced their roadmap of quantum computer, expecting a 1,000 qubit quantum computers by 2023. And this is only from IBM, and all the competitors are working to beat them, right? And this is enough power to render, as I mentioned earlier, the traditional encryption technology totally open. So practically, with the time it takes to implement new encryption technology, we really don't have time to wait. It's kind of like the siren of a tsunami. Many people see the blue sky and ignore the siren and lost their life because of the time when you can see the tsunami is too late to run. That's the reality. Now, the good news is there are indeed antidote to the problem. I'm sure you are aware of a lot of the consultants out there which provide you with a lot of solutions, such as the zero trust practice, employee protocol, antivirus software, AI threat detection software. The list just goes on. But based on the statistic of ransomware attack, it is perfectly obvious that either these are not being implemented properly by organizations, or they just don't work at all, or maybe in many cases, actually the both, right? So, but don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there's no value. There are actually tremendous value to this solution, but they are just not the true antidote to the phishing, the problem. The true antidote, in my opinion, the true antidote to phishing problem should be a preventive measure rather than an aftermath medicine, because phishing is indeed an email problem. So the preventive measure should be an email security product. And there are a lot of email encryption and digital signature product in the market, but they are either not truly end-to-end secure or wrongly advertised as being end-to-end. This means either your encrypted message or your decryption key, and in many cases, both are actually stored on a third-party server. Now, we call this a man-in-the-middle kind of solution, and obviously this is not very secure because it breaks the rules of zero trust right at the gate when there's a third-party server with the full ability to decrypt your sensitive messages. And even worse, their server is now becoming a juicy target for cybercrime. Now, on the flip side, our solution, IronCAP X, is a true end-to-end encryption with no third-party trust. And this means your confidential messages will be encrypted at your computer and stay encrypted all the way to your recipient without even existing in any way decrypted format along the way. This means only your recipient can decrypt the email. And practically, I always jokingly said that if this was available in 2016, maybe Clinton would be the president, because the FBI or the CIA would have no chance to read her email. And on the other side, now with the digital signature, it works more or less the same way that your email will be digitally signed on your computer and then stay signed all the way to your recipient. So when your recipient receive an email with your proper signature, they know it is a real email rather than a phish. So in other words, if you one day receive an email from your friend with a proper signature, and your friend said, I am stuck in the middle of some countries and I need $1,000, and you might want to really send him the money because it's a real email from your friend. So anyhow, we are launching the IronCAP X business version by the end of this month. And this is the best email encryption product because it takes you to the next level with a true end-to-end and the quantum safe the nature. It is safe against. This means it's safe against the quantum computers and today's classical computer all the way, from today into the future world of quantum computing. And so let me summarize a little bit. I'm sure you couldn't wait for a powerful panel discussion. Now, summary is that the phishing is here to stay and is very disruptive. And if you haven't been phished yet, you will be. And the current cybersecurity solutions are all useful, but not a truly antidote to the phishing problem. And IronCAP X will take you to the next level of email security with this quantum safe and true end-to-end nature. And as indicated, you can easily sign up a free personal version for try before you dive into the product. And IronCAP X is practically the world's first quantum safe enterprise solution that the general public can touch and feel. And essentially, it is a showcase of our IronCAP quantum safe encryption engine, because it can be applied to many other different industry, and email is just one of the very many, and other things such as remote access, financial transactions, the cryptocurrency, website security, the list just goes on. So it is widely available to any kind of solution. So now, okay, let's put to the bottom line here. As indicated at the beginning of my opening statement, we are very fortunate to have our panel discussion with comprises of many industry experts to talk about cybersecurity threat imposed by quantum computers, and also about the relationship between phishing email and the ransomware attacks. So to maintain the professional standard, the good news is this panel discussion is product neutral and for the purpose of information exchange and educational. So in other words, while they are certainly a fan of our IronCAP technology, I'm sure they are not going to ask you to buy IronCAP the way I do. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our panel discussion session. Thank you.
For that, Andrew, I'll make a quick comment over there, and well appreciate is that, you know, when you talked about the problems of quantum and quantum computing to the world of cybersecurity, you didn't just present a technology solution, you presented a business solution. And in the previous sessions, we talked a lot about this culture around learning new technologies and beginning to understand this new era of quantum computing, quantum encryption. So thank you for setting that context, and as always, a very strong message from an equally strong messenger. Appreciate the context, and now we'll jump right into the panel discussion. Before we dive into a couple of questions that we have pre-selected for our panelists, I will let our audience know, please feel free to drop your questions in the live chat. I do have a feed here showing me the questions. We do have 30 minutes-ish left. If I can get to those questions, I will. Otherwise, a member from the IronCAP team or the panelists will try to respond to you on the platform itself. I'm going to ask each panelist to introduce themselves. I'm going to give them approximately 60 seconds each, and I'm going to ask them to tell us who they are, the companies that they work for, and also why is this an important topic to them. So firstly, someone that I actually met at the 2019 CISO Forum Canada, Robert, or Bob as we used to call you. Bob, good to have you at the third iteration of CISO Forum Canada. Tell our audience a little bit about what you do and why is this subject of importance to you. Your 60 seconds begins now.
Hi, Ali, and thank you. Wish we were being able to join you on stage. Bob Gordon, I'm the strategic advisor of the Canadian Cyber Threat Exchange, or CCTX for short. My passion is a CCTX. I mean, it's just great being able to work with companies all across this country to figure out how do we raise the cyber hygiene, the cyber resilience for companies of all sizes. And that's what the CCTX does. We get companies together to share best practices, ideas, to share information about what they're seeing about the cyber threat that's coming after them. And it's actually really encouraging to see companies coming together, working collaboratively. It's that spirit in Canada where we can actually we do get together to work collaboratively on things. And something that's as important as cybersecurity is something where we've got to be working together. Andrew talked about what the threat is, and it plays out every single day across this country, and companies are coming together to try to help and basically raise the cyber resilience across the country.
Absolutely, Bob. Well said. And, you know, go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, we go together. And CCTX has certainly been a champion of that. Bob, it's always a pleasure to have you. From Bob in Canada, I'm going to take a flight, I believe, to the United States. Joseph, it's a little too early to be that dark behind you. But, Joseph, pleasure to welcome you to CISO Forum Canada 2021. My first exchange with you. Very excited. Can you tell our audience a little bit about what you do and why is this topic of interest to you?
Sure, thank you. I'm Joseph Steinberg, and I actually am in the New York area, although this is obviously a virtual background if it is dark at 10 a.m. Although it is the beginning of the early dark season here. I've been in the cybersecurity space for about 25 years. I've been in product companies and service companies. Today, I split my time between advising companies and serving as an expert witness and doing lots of writing on the field. I wrote a column for years for Forbes about cybersecurity, later for Inc. Today it's an independent column with several million reads a month, covering emerging risks. So I like to talk about things that people should be thinking about that we're not necessarily thinking about yet, but by the time most people think about them, they're already problems. As Andrew alluded to, these things can be very big issues because when it comes to cybersecurity, by the time you see the tsunami, it's usually too late to react without damage. So I'm very excited about quantum computing and talking about it today because this is something that is not just on the horizon, it's already starting to happen. And it's the impact of quantum computing on cybersecurity is almost like the change from a typewriter to a computer. It's going to have a dramatic impact. And it's also 100% guaranteed to happen. If the world continues the way it happens, there's no possibility these risks won't occur, and they're going to happen soon. So I'm very excited about the conversation, as you can probably hear from my voice.
Absolutely. I really like the concept of forewarned is forearmed, and you've been helping organizations plan for tomorrow's threats today. And I think that's the gist of this conversation as well. So Joseph, always a pleasure. I'm looking forward to hosting my first session with you. I'll take a flight back and return home and meet with Tyson. And Tyson, this is the second time I'm sharing a stage with you on the CyberExchange platform. You're a plethora of knowledge when it comes to quantum, very well respected in this space. Please tell our audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and again, why is this topic so important to you?
Right, and thank you very much for having me. My name is Tyson Mccauley. I'm the Chief Security Officer and the Global VP for Field Engineering at Rockport. I have about 25 years in cyber, and much of that was spent doing field engineering for cyber. So now I wear two hats, CISO for corporate and product security, as well as taking our team into the field. Rockport develops a very high performance form of networking. It's an Ethernet underlay technology used in things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, or highly parallel systems where the network is so effective that it can actually generate a far more efficient compute infrastructure. In other words, you might get 7 servers doing the work of 10 because the network is removing a lot of the bottlenecks. This is new technology, and as a result, we are very aware that other people will be watching very carefully what we're doing. We just launched out of stealth, and I can tell you that I'm actively watching the metrics on my security system to make sure that if there is a spike, and in fact I am seeing an increase of threat activity against us, we can respond. The reason I'm here and interested in quantum is because it's one of those events that has a extremely high impact, even though the likelihood of it is rather difficult to ascertain right now. The computers are getting better and better all the time, but in the event that somebody comes up with a cryptographically relevant quantum computer earlier rather than later, we're going to be scrambling. And as a CISO, I do my best to understand where the solutions are and to look at adopting solutions that can be minimally disruptive, but also provide a backstop in the event that we do have a low probability event in the form of a cryptographically relevant computer showing up sooner than we think. And that's my interest in this field particularly.
I've always said that in God we trust, everybody else must bring data. And I love the fact that the various things that you mentioned about studying the data and what's happening in this space, and probably paying attention to the fact that these quantum-based attacks are very likely. You've got data, but you've also brought context to the table. And Tyson, as always, it's a pleasure to have you, and I'm looking forward to asking a few questions as we move forward. Speaking of innovations in quantum, across Canada, UFT is a good example. Where I'm from in Dubai, various quantum research facilities have been established. And innovation is at the heart of what's driving quantum. And Florent Philippe is one individual who is at the heart of a lot of innovative practices in Canada. So Florent, this is my second time as well with you. Pleasure to have you here. Tell our audience a little bit about what you do. And again, why is this topic one that brings you back and back? Florent.
Pleasure being here. So in the Innovation Center, as you imagine, we are dealing with all kinds of, emerging technologies. We are also looking at how organizations transform through innovation. And that transformation happens, using all kinds of what we call technological growth vectors. Those growth, and I like to call them that, like that, not necessarily, technologies, And if you use those growth vectors in the right way, you will support your growth as a business, as an organization. If you use them wrong, or if, in the quantum security, for instance, if you don't use them at all because you believe that, hey, it's not necessary the right time now, you will probably shoot yourself in the foot. So for us, we see, quantum computing, quantum cybersecurity. We see also everything that has to do with, quantum cryptography as the next wave that, we mentioned, Andrew, I think that mentioned is as a tsunami. I think that if there is something else bigger than tsunami, that's what we'll see when the quantum will be actually, fully commercial available. So we want to be prepared, and we also want to create that awareness in, the cyber ecosystem, in the innovation ecosystem. Hey, times are changing, and probably to get back to, an old saying that was, don't give a man a fish, taught him how to fish. Today will be, don't give somebody an email in order to get, caught in the phishing. Taught him how to protect against that, and probably you will also, of course, be protected against, ransomware.
Absolutely. I maintain that philosophy in the classroom as well. Teach me and, they'll remember, but involve them and they'll learn. And I think the process of which you've involved folks in the conversation is extremely important. And the tsunami metaphor is very apt, not only because I lived through it, and I can tell the responses that came after that were very reactive. So thank you, Florian, and thank you, everybody, for that. And last but not the least, Asif, I'm going to go a bit of on a limb here, but I know you and I could talk at length about a lot of subjects, including cricket. Very important time in the world right now when it comes to cricket, especially if you have teams from South Asia, very interesting times. But Asif, we'll leave that for coffee at another time. But Asif, it's a pleasure again to share the stage with you. Very quickly, tell our audience about who you are, your amazing achievements and work at PwC, and again, why is this topic of intrigue to you?
Thanks, Ali. It's hard not to talk about cricket at this point in time. However, we'll pivot back to our topic right now. So I work in PwC, basically in risk assurance, leading both cybersecurity risk and controls and emerging tech. And why this is topically a big area of interest is because having like a lot of people on this forum, being client facing all the time, we see cyber as new threat vectors emerging every single day. And a lot of them are emerging across the conventional paths and routes that Andrew spoke about. And then we see a lot of threats emerging on the new plethora of technology which is coming and hitting our way across various different existing technologies, organizations moving to the cloud, workers becoming remote, workers becoming mobile. And also a lot of information going into organizations who were always not on the primary but on the tertiary field, example in healthcare with COVID, etc. So we see a lot of this coming up, and a special area of interest as we kind of constantly are on the lookout of new technologies which will be disruptors in the coming future, and quantum pretty much ranks the highest amongst that. So that's kind of the area of interest and something that we'll be talking about today as well with Andrew and others. Thank you.
Fantastic. And I think, you did a really good job in not just explaining why quantum is, you've done work in AI, in IoT, in blockchain, but you've rated quantum right up there. And I think to our audience members as well, if you take the time and you go to the IronCap group on the Cyber Exchange platform, you'll see quite a lot of notes that have been posted around research around quantum. Some, I believe, reference these panelists as well. So please, if you're just getting into this space or you've already started engaging with quantum encryption techniques, which are some of the work that's being evaluated within the NIST environment as well, there's a lot of neat information you can get from the IronCap group. We've got about 22 minutes to go, and we've got a select set of questions to ask each panelist, and I'm going to dive right into the deep end. Asif, since you mentioned a sector-specific approach to quantum, and you mentioned healthcare, I want to take you up a little bit on that. So in the recent past, probably even a week and a half ago, we've seen hospitals in Newfoundland and Labrador, some hospitals in Ontario and across North America, but a lot in Canada have seen a concentrated barrage of attacks. When you look at something like this, What does it tell you about the healthcare sector as a consistent target, and how does that shape when you think about the threat that is coming and emerging through quantum techniques? Asif, a couple of minutes for your perspective.
Absolutely. I mean, thank you so much for bringing that up, Ali, because you see, the thing is that right now our healthcare systems are just so overwhelmed at the moment that everyone is kind of focused on what their core is. There's a huge influx of new kind of data coming in on all sorts. And on the other end, if you look at the strategic trends on the dark web, there's the amount of price which is out to pay for personal identifiable information, PII, has drastically gone up on those dark exchanges. So what's actually happening is that looking into the weakest link in that chain, we see a lot of cybersecurity threats coming this way. And last year, the biggest thing on the news was about this diagnostic lab, which had a breach. And then after that, we saw 3 hospitals go in. And this time, it's happened in Newfoundland and Labrador, which is now rated as a national cybersecurity threat for Canada. That's how this breach is being identified. Systems went down. Healthcare was not being provided at a time of crisis that we face right now in COVID. And then we see a huge new number of trends coming in, right? Because they have to be taken care of because of the overwhelming surge in tertiary healthcare centers, which were not really positioned to take care of cybersecurity with as diligence as a big hospital could, or they didn't have the resources. So the government of Canada has come up with a series of regulations, and there's a lot of outcry for these enterprises to basically asking government to increase the standard. But at this point, I would also like, Andrew, we've discussed this topic a few times, Andrew, within ourselves as well, right? That I think that this particular sector has been quite underserved, and the threat vectors seem to be pointing towards it a lot. So I just wanted, Andrew, of our discussion, if you could shed some light on this as well, please.
Well, in fact, you're right. It has been underserved, and that's, pointing right back to my, analogy of the tsunami. There's a siren here, and we see a lot of people kind of ignoring the siren. Oh yeah, I heard about that. I heard the siren, but there's a blue sky out there, and let me see if there's anything happened before I react. And this is a very dangerous proposition as how we started. And we really have no time to act, because it takes time to upgrade your encryption, and that lead time between you compare that lead time to the time when the quantum computer, a big quantum computer, become available on the public hands, right? It's actually way too late already, from that stance. Yeah.
And I would completely agree to that. And we also, to add to that, I think everyone would agree, is that because our workers are becoming mobile, right, we see lack of general training amongst the users, because they were so used to working from within the environment of their office or the enterprise. Now a home user is not trained well enough, and hence the susceptibility to fall to various different phishing attacks or attacks such nature has kind of gone up so high. So this is something that we see in the healthcare system as well. And one thing I would like to just point out, that for people who are interested, so Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity has got a new distinct cyber threat management outline for healthcare organizations. So, to read up on it. However, I feel that it is, like everything else in this space, it's a study in progress. So Ali, back to you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And cybersecurity is not a destination. It is a journey, as our chairs at the beginning had stated. So thank you, Asif and Andrew, for that very good commentary on why healthcare needs to be paying attention to this growth in quantum encryption, etc. We've got about 18 minutes to go. And speaking of the key word there, disruption, you've spoken at the enterprise level and healthcare and why we need to be considering these shifts. Florian, I want to bring you into the conversation because as we were discussing prior, in the way for example, the world of cryptocurrencies is evolving and the way folks are trading in digital currencies, et cetera. We've seen a lot of attacks, sophisticated attacks now, that are looking at tapping into the digital coin systems that are being used en masse. Florian, can you comment a little bit about how quantum computing and quantum-based attacks can impact, or rather will impact, this space of digital transactions? Florian?
So first of all, it's clear that when we look at, the emails and we talk about, phishing and everything, there we have the two aspects. We have the human aspect and we have the technological aspect. Right. When we move on the cryptocurrency, we actually, deal a lot with all kinds of, behind the scenes systems. So there the technology has, I will say, a much bigger impact than simply, just sending an email for phishing. And from that perspective, there are a couple of advances that have been done, and it's really interesting because you look at what, for instance, Bitcoin has done in order to allow, with what it's called, the Schnorr digital keys, to allow three parties to create a signature. And it's really interesting because that can be, let's say, sufficient for today's work. However, if you look into, and you go into tomorrow, and that's where, from a facts perspective, quantum computing and quantum security, can actually bring that level of trust into cryptocurrency. And that's because if we look at the facts, today, the Shor algorithm actually that is based, the quantum Shor algorithm can easily factor, large number far more quickly than a classical computer. So even if today, for instance, we'll be able to, create a key from, three parties and so on, when the quantum computing will be there, that power will be able to actually break that encryption. That's a fact. If you look at, basic elements like RSA encryption that it's widely used today, again, in all our transactions, yes, we have seen and we know that a 20 million qubit computer could break that in around 8 hours. And that's where people can say, oh, okay, you tell me about 20 million, we are just at 1,000. Oh, I have time, related to the blue sky that Andrew mentioned. So I don't think that we have time. What I really think is that, especially taking into consideration that the cryptocurrency is not something that will go away. The cryptocurrency is actually probably the future of the financial transactions. And today we see we are at the stage of experimentation today, actually. Yes, we have, some, that we have 1,600 cryptocurrencies today. So we have some established ones and we have, experimentation in different domains. What's happening is that when those domains will actually start converging, when we will have like national, cryptocurrencies, when we have global cryptocurrencies, that's where actually we will see much bigger impact from, quantum computing, quantum cryptography. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is that, when we talk about breaking encryption and securing, breaking encryption is not only modifies, the present, also modifies the past. So everything that we have, for instance, today, and let's say in 3 years, we will have, quantum attack. Yep. Everything that we have produced from today till, 2024, let's say, is actually, not protected. It's not only that specific time that we say, okay, starting now, we have to, to actually better protect us. It's actually everything that we have done in the past. So those elements are, I think, that are really important. And what my message is that even if you don't think today using cryptocurrencies even if you don't, you don't explore that, because we will see also cryptocurrencies, the same way that we have seen e-commerce, business to consumer, business to business, business to consumer. We also see, cryptocurrencies, business models that will evolve and will really evolve really interesting when those transactions between businesses will be done in cryptocurrencies. And that will also have a big impact in, how we deal with cybersecurity when that will happen, and will happen in a different way. Probably will be also peer-to-peer, not necessary, through all kind of backend systems that we have today. So if you want, my message today is start exploring and using all those, quantum solutions that are available. Everything that is related to, to post-quantum algorithm is already there. So be proactive. Probably digital signatures and key agreements are two areas that, where organizations need to focus. And it's possible that patching those two areas will actually help the vast majority of, vulnerabilities that might come, from quantum computation. And one element that is, I think that it's critical, is establish a quantum cryptography strategy. It's something that very few organizations have today. And most of the time we look at quantum, cryptography as something that, we paint our walls that have all kind of, cybersecurity colors. We paint them with quantum and we say, okay, we have a quantum, cybersecurity there. But it's more than that. It's actually how you bake in that, quantum cryptography approach. How you make sure that is embedded in your organization, in your strategy, in the approach that you have around cryptography and so on. And again, this is because we can talk about, everything that has to do with crypto money, but we need to look at the evolution of all those platforms. And again, how the organizations in the future will actually use cryptocurrencies in order to do business.
I like that. And I think you've really hinted at the advancements in computing. There was a time when we told computers what to do, and today computers are giving us lots to think about. So I think that shift and that proactive approach is well received. Thank you so much, Florian, for that very detailed response. We've got about 9 minutes to go and I have 3 more panelists to weave in some questions to. I will add this, that I have received a couple of questions from our audience, and I'm going to weave that into the discussion. And Rob, you're going to be on the hot seat because a question that's come in, and I'll weave it into our initial plan, and this has to do with how are you seeing government agencies in the public sector responding to this new age of attacks? And as we had discussed, recently we saw the TTC take a pretty significant hit. From your perspective, how is the public sector preparing for this new wave of computing quantum-driven attacks? Robert?
Thank you very much. I think what I'll do is condense my comments down quite a bit. I think the government's doing a fair bit. As Seth mentioned, the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, a very good initiative by the government, bringing the government providing a focal point for all their technical advice and the threat information that they're bringing together. They changed the legislation for the new Cyber Center when they created it, so it now brings together all the cryptologic capability, the foreign intelligence collection capability of the government into one place. And they're now producing a variety of reports, alerts, assessments. As Seth mentioned, the one, for example, on the healthcare, we're starting to see that coming out. And more importantly, they're starting to produce it not just for the big industries, but also for small, medium-sized business. They've also got the legal authority to conduct what they call defensive cyber operations, where they actually have the authority to go out and disrupt the capabilities of foreign threats that are being done or taken online. Really good initiative. Obviously, we don't hear about that, but I'm assuming that behind the scenes, they're doing that. They're being creative in some of the engagement that they're doing with the private sector. They're releasing malware detection and analysis tool, for example, that they developed. They're producing that out. They also did an interesting thing with the Canadian Internet Registry Authority. They produced what's called Canadian Shield. And basically, that's a free protected DNS service that helps prevent connecting to malicious websites. And they're doing it with the threat intelligence from the Cyber Center, and they're embedding that into it. So it's a great way for the government to be passing along that information directly out to the private sector. We're seeing the Innovation, Science, Economic Development Canada, their Cyber Secure Canada program. That's a certification program for small and medium-sized businesses. So that's on the prevention side. But I think the other thing that's important is to go after the attacker. And I think the establishment of the National Cybercrime Coordination Unit, that's a group being set up by the RCMP to provide as a national service to all police departments so they can get much better in coordinating those police operations going after the attacker. And I think that's what we've got to be doing. We've got to be doing lots more of that. I mean, there's more to be said about what the government's doing nationally. But with ransomware and those kinds of attacks, we've got to be looking at this at more of a global scale. We've got to be going after and stop the motivation for the attacker. And in ransomware, we've got to be stopping the money flow. So we're really encouraging some of the things going on in the United States. For example, they held the big summit a couple of weeks ago, brought 30 countries together to sit down and try to go after the attackers abroad. So how do we make it harder for them to use cryptocurrency? Because if you start to get rid of that motivation, it starts to cut out from underneath them the ability, the interest of the criminal. Really encouraging. Last week, U.S. State Department talked about offering up a reward of $10 million to lead to the people who are responsible for, in this case, dark side, the people who were after the colonial pipelines. So I think there's lots of things that are going on, both domestically, but this has got to be done. We talk about collaboration in a Canadian sense. This has got to be done collaboratively at an international level. We've got to become a little more creative in some of the things we're doing. The U.S. has done a couple of good things. Australia last week introduced a ransomware action plan. So this is a specific thing going after the ransomware. And one of the things that there are two noteworthy things there, and I'll stop with that, is one, they're looking at making mandatory ransomware incident reporting mandatory. You've got to tell the government so they can do that planning and bring resources to bear on it. They've also created a standalone offense for all forms of cyber extortion. So making it much easier for law enforcement to go after and take action against these attackers coming in. And I think I'll leave it at that point. Let the others get in.
No, thank you so much for that, Robert. And I think, with the other question that came in as well is that, you've pointed to various resources that are available. But I think what's also important is, and to the audience member that asked that directly to me, is keep in mind, yes, this area of quantum encryption, etc., may be a relatively new area, but with work that's going on at UFT, for example, some of the work that my team at DC is doing in collaboration with IronCAP as well, there are educational resources that are available. It's important to know what you do not know, and I've seen many CISOs now take us up on opportunities to have workshops, so on and so forth. And I know I'm speaking to Asif this Friday as well to talk about how we can bring and channel some of those items. So Robert, as always, thank you for bringing the public sector perspective. Much appreciated. I want to go to Joseph and then Tyson. You saved the very best for the last. This has to work somewhere, but Tyson, I have two questions actually that have come for you. So stay tuned with bated breath. Joseph, I want to come to you first. And I want to get your perspective on, Andrew spoke a lot about email and focused a lot on email as a site from where you can begin to discuss quantum-related encryption and quantum-based attacks. Can you shed some perspective on why is email seen as a very interesting starting point when talking about quantum-driven attacks? Joseph?
Well, first of all, I think email is a good starting point when you talk about most attacks, because
Absolutely.
That's one of the primary ways that humans communicate, and humans are almost always the Achilles heel of the information security process. So you're going to see that in general. But when it comes to quantum, look, I'm a blunt New Yorker. I'm going to say it as it is. Every document that you're having emailed to you today, every single email that's coming to you today, if it's not encrypted in a way that will survive, quantum-based cryptographic, attacks, cryptanalysis, etc., it means that at some point in the future, and as Andrew said, it may not be that far in the future, these things will be readable to anybody who's captured the data, whether it's encrypted or not. And so if there's highly sensitive information being transmitted by email that's going to be sensitive in 2, 3, or 5 years, and you're not protecting it against, future attacks that are not that far in the future, you just have to assume if that message is captured, which everything sent by email could be captured because it's going over insecure networks like, and going SMTP, etc., it's going to be readable by somebody.
Yep.
So, just keep that in mind. This is not a theoretical problem. The same goes with digital signatures. If you've got documents stored that you're going to need to, assert in a lawsuit in 7 years, and they've been stored with digital signatures that are going to be able to be undermined by, quantum systems, or maybe underminable by quantum systems in less than that time, you may have issues asserting them if you don't convert those over beforehand. Think about all your backups. It's not a tsunami where it's coming in and there's a blue sky and the siren goes off and it's just you on the beach. You've got hundreds of homes and office buildings, and you may not even know where all of them are. And that tsunami's coming. Where are all your backups? Are they encrypted? And if the encryption is old encryption, or encryption that's not going to be, considered secure in 3 or 4, 5 years, what happens with those backups? Are you just going to leave them that way in some vault and hope that nobody ever accesses them and, decrypts them? Or are you going to convert those over beforehand? So, this isn't a matter of, okay, that tsunami alarm has gone off, it's time to act because I got to get out of here. It's, if I don't get my act together, I'm going to have so much to do when that tsunami comes in, that it's not just me that's going to be in danger. It's all the stuff I've already built that's going to be in danger. And, anything you're sending now, is going to be decryptable in the future, unless you act now. So, this isn't a theoretical risk, and it's not a risk that you need to address because of future problems. It's protecting the stuff of today. And email is a great example of this, because email is transported over insecure networks that are, and even when you're encrypting it, that encryption is no good. If it's captured, somebody can decrypt it in a few years. So these are things to think about. These are real problems about the sensitivity of data that you're creating today. So, while you ask about email, it's email and everything else.
Absolutely.
It's a big problem.
No, thank you for giving us the New Yorker perspective. And I really like that differentiation that you made between theory and practice. I always say this in my classes, that there's the difference between theory and practice is that in theory, there is no difference. This is the reality. This is what's happening. And some very concrete examples that you brought, just from starting with email, as a very good baseline from which to understand how quantum encryption and quantum computing attacks can actually have devastating effects. So Joseph, as always, thank you for keeping it straight and keeping it to the point. I appreciate that. Tyson, the final question is to you, and then we'll come to a quick soft landing. Tyson, slightly different from what we previously discussed, and I will weave in the question from the audience member. Tyson, you made reference, again, you also spoke about the importance about understanding email encryption and communication encryption, but you made reference that in your work at Rockport, you're also doing testing. You're also doing a lot of analysis that's getting you to see where quantum attacks could be coming from and also understand the future of the threat landscape. Can you give our audience a little bit of a perspective on the processes that you have in place, and how do you keep your team proactively ready for such potential attacks? Tyson?
Sure. Recognizing we're running a little bit late, the reality is that crypto is everywhere in our infrastructure right now. And migrating to more secure crypto with our existing infrastructure is going to take time. And if we're caught flat-footed, we'll be scrambling, frankly. And from a testing perspective, it's not really so much about testing as it is about inventory and understanding where your crypto lies, what versions you've got, and having an order of operations for replacement and or refresh, both on an urgency basis as well as something you can do in a controlled manner. And when we look at email, and as Joseph was saying, email is not only used for everything, but it also has everything. Pretty much any corporate asset somehow finds its way into email, whether it's intellectual property or financial transaction information. So having the ability to rapidly turn on protection for that, or even implement it early on, is a great way of hedging against the quantum threat. From a product perspective, again, it's not so much about testing different types of post-quantum crypto as it is tracking exactly where the crypto in the products lies, what type of crypto it is, how long are the keys, what are the algorithms, what are the libraries, and understanding if there was an unexpected event with a cryptographically relevant quantum computer surfacing, what would you replace first? How would you replace it? Because many organizations, particularly product organizations, don't actually know where all their crypto lies. And that in and of itself is a challenge for anybody who's in this space. I'll leave it at that.
Absolutely. And to our audience members who have more questions, especially on the email pieces, etc., please feel free to connect on cyberexchange.ca and ask some of the panelists your questions and reach out to the team at IronCap as well. Now, we are completely short on time, and I know that there's another riveting session that's following us. So I will, Andrew, I will steal the stage from you and just bring us to concluding remarks. I know, Andrew, you do have a keynote that's coming up very shortly as well. So to our audience that wants to hear more about the state of quantum-driven attacks, Andrew will be delivering a keynote. I believe it's on day 2, if I'm not mistaken, and I advise you and invite you to attend and tune into that session. Once again, to our panelists, Asif, Florin, Joseph, Robert, Tyson, and of course, Andrew, thank you so much for your time today. If there's one thing that I've learned is that one of the biggest mistakes that we make is thinking we have time. And the time is now to act on some very relevant data and context that you have presented. Thank you, as always, for your time. Thank you to our audience members for your questions. We have a short break for about 20 minutes, and then we'll go on to the next session. Stay safe, stay healthy wherever you are, and enjoy the rest of CISO Forum Canada 2021. Cheers.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.